Joy Park is joining us now.
Hi. Hi,
Hi, Joy, welcome.
thank you. Thanks for this chance to present my view on the Conversion Practices Prohibition Legislation Bill. The Parliament's webpage states that research emphasizes that conversion practices do not work and can contribute to issues such as low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts and attempts. From this statement, I think their research was either inadequate or very skewed in focus or data collection methodology, because there are countless cases where people gained freedom, confidence, and restoration of true identity through counseling processes on gender issues, what this bill has labeled as conversion practices. Firstly, I think there is fundamental problem with the bill's wording. What Mr. Farfoy termed as conversion practices, and now widely known as conversion therapy, is actually often an open and loving and caring advice for another person. Such labeling of innocent phenomena is nasty, and it associates negative, coercive, and violent connotations to what is genuinely loving, discerning, and voluntarily involved counseling, and free and open discussions about gender. This labeling recalls what George Orwell introduced as newspeak language in his well-known novel 1984. Politicians introduce new language to change how people think about certain things. We need a paradigm shift here, I believe, from politically infused agendas into a sensitivity to reality. This made me think about what the real people are going through as opposed to what the politicians said about the so-called conversion therapy and the dysphoria phenomena. And this reminded me of Kira Bell's story that I saw in the news last year, hence the background, which I wrote about very briefly in my written submission. Kira Bell was a British girl who regretted her decision to take gender change procedures, and as a result sued the Portman National Health Service Foundation Trust that had never genuinely challenged her decisions and thoughts that she was going through as a young person. This is what Kira wrote. I was adamant that I needed to transition. It was a kind of brash assertion that's typical of teenagers. What was really going on was that I was a girl insecure in my body who had experienced parental abandonment, felt alienated from my peers, suffered from anxiety and depression, and struggled with my sexual orientation. She continues, after a series of superficial conversation with social workers, I was put on puberty blockers at age 16. A year later, I was receiving testosterone shots by age 20. As you can see in the middle picture here, she had quite a masculine build, as well as a man's voice, man's beard, and adopting a man's name too. But further her transition went, Kira says the more she realized that she wasn't a man and never would be. And here's a striking sentence from Kira. As I matured, I recognized that gender dysphoria was a symptom of my overall misery, not its cause. She said, when I was seen at the clinic, I had so many issues that it was comforting to think I really had only one that needed solving. I was a male in a female body. But it was the job of the professionals to consider all my comorbidities, not just to affirm my naive hope that everything could be solved with hormones and surgery. End of quote. This shows a person who went through both the trans and detrans process, raising the need that she should have been able to access a more holistic counseling that considers what she called all of her comorbidities. So after 5 years of medical transition to becoming a male, Kira started the process of detransitioning. But even after detransitioning, she had to suffer the consequences of possible infertility, loss of her breast, and inability to breastfeed, and a permanently changed voice and facial hair. She won the court case against the NHS that did not provide her with an alternative perspective, which can be seen as the conversion therapy attempts by this bill. Kira's story is significant here because she illustrates that as a teenager, she had deeper roots of wounds and issues inside, which as a teenager, she expressed on the surface level that it was gender dysphoria. But reality was that her problem was deeper rooted and multifaceted. She was from a broken family. Her mother suffered alcohol addiction and depression, and she couldn't adapt to new schools, and she was without friends. She later recalls that the counseling from the social workers as part of the medical and surgical procedures towards medical and surgical gender changes as being superficial. What she needed was a deeper healing inside, which counseling could have provided. And the photos below of Mr. Walter Heyer is another famous figure who was born in 1940 and who lived 7 years of his middle-aged life as a woman through an irrevocable surgery when the psychologists rashly concluded to affirm him of the need of surgical gender change procedures. Although he had thought becoming a woman by surgery would sort out everything for his life, he still sank deep into alcohol addiction and still cherished suicidal thoughts. Thankfully, instead of committing suicide, he sought counseling for help. He later found out that his real issue was dissociative disorders that he had unconsciously developed to escape childhood traumas, including that of sexual abuse. The source problem was not gender dysphoria as the psychologists who recommended the surgical procedures. Later, he asked for his apology. He later came back as a man, but he recalls the whole process as to have been irrecoverable and unnecessary. An alternative counseling to diagnose the dissociative disorders from childhood traumas could have led to a better rehab process without permanent damages. There are countless other stories that show the liberating and life-giving effects of what this bill has labeled as conversion therapies. These stories share in common that they found life and freedom again through genuine counseling, which this bill is attempting to criminalize. In the Asian culture, many girls who suffer gender dysphoria have it because of the wide cultural and traditional preference for boys, which those in modern Western society cannot fully understand. In extreme situations, girls can be abandoned at birth or not being given a chance to be born into the family, being aborted, or simply not being a boy. Thinking about growing in such cultures, would you be nasty to use the newspeak language labeling as conversion therapies and ban any of the attempts to heal the deep wounds in these girls' minds inflicted by culture? Should it be a crime to tell them that you are still precious as a girl? So I think I've gone over time already. I wanted to say more, but I think I should keep it to the time limit.
Thank you, Joy. That was really thorough.
Thank you.
Very thorough. Thank you very much, Joy.
Thanks for your time. Bye.